Looking at the surety, the principal is the all caps name. The surety is the all caps name. On deposit with the Depository Trust Company, 55 Water Street, New York, New York, for $2 million regarding this particular traffic citation. I executed the bond in 2015. And then, because that was the date of the ticket, but the date of the case is the bid date. That was 2016, January. I'm gonna make copies and then show. It's like, I'm tired of this shit, man. Boys be talking, oh, here's a form. Yeah, there is a fucking form. Let's talk about them then. And how you use them, because there's more than one way to get done what you need to get done. But it all goes back to, even with these bonds, how I was sharing with the other day. The affidavit. Even with these bonds, there's an affidavit attached.
So affidavits always precede things. They're like a PSA.
It's not necessarily precede. It could either precede or back.
Okay.
Back it.
But they need to be somewhere along the process. That's what I would take away from this.
That's why the first affidavit we need to think about is the affidavit that denies your corporation. Because they allege that you're a corporation. The corporation is not just, when you talk about the Sister K VI, the trust, the Sister K Trust, that trust is the all caps representation, but it's not just Sister K Trust, it's also a corporation. With a social security number. Those people sit back like, man, this is a democracy and capitalism, blah, blah, blah. It's also socialism. Because if it's not socialism, then why do you have a social security number? We're talking about it. These bonds have an OMB number. Thus, they're securities. When you look at the passport application now has an OMB number. It's officially a security. Those things that are securities with OMB numbers are tied to the Federal Reserve Bank. The reason why those medical records with Biden administration talking about how that was sold or whatever over to WHO, World Health Organization, it's because the people getting passports are now tracked by the Federal Reserve, which operates and does everything that it does through a securitization process. Coming out of Gene Keating's Securitization 101 treatise that he did years ago. I learned about that because Pastor Tony King, Gene Keating, Tom Schaaf, it was like the OGs came together in workshop. I think that shit was like $20-something thousand to get in for 3 days.
Wow.
And they talked about the Miller Act bonds, the 24, 25, 25A. And I haven't used the Miller Act bonds. I've used the 24, 25, 25A. And got case dismissed. This is why when you look at Federal Rules, Civil Procedure Rule 17, when it talks about who can bring or answer or bring suit in the party of the real, in the name of the real party in interest. The real party in interest is always your all caps name. But you are not your all caps name unless you say that you are. And how you identify that for the record would be through a code, and it comes through hyphens and colons. Kind of like when you say you do a legal signature, not legal, a legal electronic signature. You can just sign, but there's a symbol for electronic signature, and it's / lowercase s / That's electronic signature symbol. So does it mean that if you sign something electronically, if it doesn't have that symbol, that it's not binding? However, it's something that you can bring up in question. You see? Because all this is talking about is contracts with the prime contractor. The prime contractor in the situation when you are awarded a contract. That's why when people have sovereigns or whatever, they get a traffic citation and say, talk about the 72 hour right of rescission, 3 days. Think about Jesus died, 3 days, rose again, same principle. But you have the 72-hour rule to send that right back to them and say no contract per whatever you want to stipulate in, why you don't need a driver's license. For me, I just put, we don't have a contract. If I don't have a driver's license, there's no contract. If there's no contract, then you're accosting me because I'm not driving, I'm traveling. Drivers get paid to ship goods and services. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't in the act of commerce in that particular manner. I'm just ingressing and regressing in my own common way. So you can then coerce me into the contract, and when you know how to do this type of paperwork, you turn it against them. This is why we say, learn the rules to the game so we could flip it back on them. In order for one to get equity, one must do equity. So to your point earlier when you said, is it just to make sure that the affidavit precedes all things? And it's like, really, truly, yeah. Your affidavit precedes anything you do. And then affidavits that need to be drafted thereafter can back it by supporting evidence, or you can use affidavit, which is already on file with them on record. You feel me? Mm-hmm. And then say, hey, man, y'all already fucked up. But it's getting ahead of the game. That's what Gwen Whitecall talked about. We be playing from behind. That's why I don't get down with that whole concept of people saying, we don't want to deal with non-blacks and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, say, man, that's the other form. Go into the international styles manual, how the government has to communicate with you, and they tell you the nationality ain't talking about no more. If you were born in the States, on the land of the continental United States, if you were born here, the 50 states, then for at least 30 days, according to a common law, Anglo-Saxon law, you were state citizen first. And that state citizen was born into the republic. Then 30 days later or so, a recordation of your birth was then identified by a birth certificate created through the Department of Transportation. Okay? Because they have to create the vessel. The vessel is identified by the all caps name, which is a Sesticate Trust, which then allows a Social Security account to be opened. And they bond you through that certificate and create certain denominations of notes through the Treasury by way of the Federal Reserve because of your birth in the Republic, that they have now conferred nationality upon us by any means whatsoever. That nationality that was conferred through that certification process is the 14th Amendment, because the 13th Amendment abolished slavery for Black African-American slaves. But the 14th Amendment made everybody a corporate now slave, chattel slave. So now that nationality of the 14th Amendment has been conferred upon us by any means whatsoever because of lack of full disclosure. When we take our move and get into so-called private, the public-private differentiation, all caps name, public, proper spelling name, hyphenated, full colon, private. So now you take that same document that they used to confer this nationality upon you by any means whatsoever, and you re-annex it, or you annex it outside of the jurisdiction by removing yourself, that proper spelling name, from their zip code, their zoning improvement plan. That's why when you present a passport, card, or book, they want to see a utility bill or something that identifies your name at a particular address. But there is a way to where you play. You can't, it's like you got to look at the birth certificate like the token piece on a Monopoly board. The birth certificate is your token. This one, they gave your trust a certain amount of money, and the banker controls it as the trustee through the treasury. They have delineated power or authority to the governor, the mayor, all through their agencies and instrumentalities and municipalities. Sure, there's a form to not have to pay taxes and get groceries free. Yeah, because the way the system is flipped, the way it's supposed to be, if you're of the land, you don't pay tax. But if you're foreign, you pay tax. The nationality that was conferred by any means whatsoever positioned us to be enemies of the state as a U.S. citizen. Because we are the creditors for the United States. And the United States has a debt. And the reason why they hate us right now as U.S. citizens is because we keep letting the system stay in debt because of our fiscal, jurists. There we go. Our fiscal and jurisprudence is It's lacking. Our fiscal and jurisprudence is lacking. Prudence means knowledge. We're supposed to be discharging our debts, not paying, or quote in air quotes, paying with a debt instrument. You can't pay debt with debt. That's not how this money system works with that type of algebra. A negative and a negative does not equal a positive in a double bookkeeping entry system. That's based in credits and debits, but all monetarily debt instruments. So if you don't discharge the debt, you're still in sin.
Meaning we're operating with unclean hands.
Exactly. But when you do it because you know that the Federal Reserve note can't pay for something, when you know this, you have to put them on notice. That's why notice the principal is notice the agent is notice the principal. We are the principal. But you have to be on the record as such, usurping or overriding everything that they got on the record about you and your estate already. You have to correct the record. Or like, that's why they call it a status correction.
Mm-hmm.
And that status is civil and political. That's why learning how to fill out the 1099A process, that's not a public thing that people are on YouTube making all this shit public. It's not public, man. You can be known and made aware of it, but processes and how this shit goes, this shit supposed to be private. And people putting this shit out for free on YouTube, and it's like, you can identify them, the process, be like, oh shit, that niggas doing that. They about to set some people up to get their shit denied, and then the IRS gonna not waste any time and be like frivolous files and hit you for $5,000. And how the people who doing this can't afford no fucking $5,000. They're gonna have to call and settle or see how they can fight it. But guess what? If you're doing this shit and you got your bank account and a social security number tied with that, then that means that they can come and take your shit at any point. That's the flip side niggas ain't talking about. They can levy your account for $5,000 with a notice of lien. It's not a lien. It's a notice of lien because they can't lien you. But you can agree to contract for that notice of lien and sign a different contract saying that you agree to pay this notice of lien. Unless you notice them on some other shit. But you gonna accept what they say by taking, because there is no money in this country. We, the people, if there is money in this country, because an idea is money is an idea that's more clearly seen with the mind. The people are the money. But you can take that envelope because they tell you how to fill it out. And go back to Tom Shaw pointing that shit out. Because there's no money, you can take a napkin, an envelope, and create a money order. Put your information on there. Tell them where to go get it. Back that particular instrument with other foundational elements, 1099A, to acquire that particular instrument. Because remember, as we talked yesterday, if it's negotiable unless it has terms and conditions attached. The terms, unwritten, and conditions of this instrument that could be negotiable is the 1099A that's acquiring the interest in it. If you desire, you can put a 1040V with it to vouch for it. They can use that as the voucher. Now, that right there is in triplica. You have your accepted money order on the envelope. You have your 1099A with the description of property claiming, acquiring that particular instrument and its value. Then you have the 1040V that's vouching behind it. That's the voucher. Send that certified mail to whomever. I would say the registered agent as we talk. Send it to the registered agent. Because CEOs and CFOs usually going to give it the legal department. So just send it straight to legal, attention to whoever, CEO, CFO. And then make sure the contents, the tenor of the actual document, the tenor of the document stipulates that you have witness thereof the U.S. Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney in your particular state area. So it's like, here is the administrative process. And what we're going to talk about Wednesday is expounding on the particular process of it with that minimum contact aspect. Because they deal with presumptions and assumptions of law. Talking about the courts, the attorneys, the lawyers. They presume based on what's already on the record. Then they assume. Okay? And then they tacitly get you to respond, agreeing that you're CPR, that you need CPR. And the CPR is the citizen, the principal, and the resident. I'm sorry, not the principal, the person. The citizen, the person, and the resident, CPR, citizen, person, resident. And they establish their process through hearsay. Because whatever the police officer pulled you over for when that attorney speaks, you could object immediately. Why? Because that attorney wasn't there. So what they say objectively becomes hearsay. But instead of going in and putting up all that hoopla, just bonded the case with the bid bond, performance bond, and the payment bond. Send it straight to the judge's chambers directly, and the judge is going to get it to the clerk. They're going to file it. So this is how we can protect ourselves, even if you have no protection, by understanding to go through the process that sits there for us already. This is what it means to be redeemed. You are your own. We are our own saviors. We are the Christ. If we take our time to go and, to the spiritual mount 40 days and 40 nights and do that diligence.
Truth.
Get people out of jail with the Miller Act. Take care of your indictments with child support through the Miller Act. Because you have a prime contractor that you have a contract with, and that prime contractor is usually the state. Through voter's registration card, through state ID, driver's license. This is why it's important that you sign your name, even if you have these contracts, sign your name on that document a certain way. Let your superscription be made known. I'm the beneficiary. You can put DEN, period. ARR. Underneath your signature. Say it again, I'm sorry.
I was saying all rights reserved.
All rights reserved. Because when you get in court, the judge is going to ask you, what is this? What is this? Oh, I'm the beneficiary. Oh, what is this ARR? I'm reserving all my rights according to Uniform Commercial Code 1-306. Or you don't even have to use the code, because sometimes they'll trip you up with the code. You just use the substance of what the code says. This is why it's not about writing the codes and knowing the numbers. It's an understanding or having an understanding of the tenor of what it's saying. So if you know that they operate by presumptions and assumptions of law, and they tacitly get you to agree to a particular title, position through hearsay, then you have to object according to the subject matter that you're there for. And the subject matter for most people are different. However, we're still talking the same subject matter, which is jurisdiction. What contract do you have on record with whomever got you in this particular court venue, this hearing? Because court is the paperwork. The venue is where they hear. That's where the trial takes place. And when you cold enough with it, you ain't got to show up in court in the venue, because your paperwork preceded you. And they know not to even waste their time with you when they got others that they don't know this, and they can run through them real quick and, stack up on their slush fund. And meaning the judges, police officers, the revenue agents.